Chapter 4. Catherine Earnshaw gets to know the Lintons. 1775. Hindley came home for his father's burial. What was more surprising was that he brought a wife with him. She was called Frances, a thin, pale woman with a frequent cough. Now that Hindley was the master of the house, he ordered Joseph and me to spend our evenings in the small back kitchen as we were only servants, while he, his wife and Catherine sat in the main room. Catherine and Heathcliff were treated very differently. Catherine received presents and could continue her lessons, but Heathcliff was made to work on the farm with the men, and as a farm worker was only allowed to eat with us in the back kitchen. They grew up like two wild animals. Hindley did not care what they did as long as they kept out of his way, and they did not care even if he punished them. They often ran away onto the moors in the morning and stayed out all day, just to make Hindley angry. I was the only one who cared what happened to the two poor creatures, and I was afraid for them. One Sunday evening, they were missing at bedtime, and Hindley ordered me angrily to lock the front door. But I did not want them to stay out in the cold all night, so I kept my window open to look out for them. In a while, I saw Heathcliff walking through the gate. I was shocked to see him alone. "Where's Catherine?" I cried sharply. "At Thrushcross Grange with our neighbours, the Lintons," he replied. "Let me in, Ellen, and I'll explain what happened." I went down to unlock the door, and we came upstairs very quietly. "Don't wake the master up," I whispered. "Now tell me." Well, Catherine and I thought we'd just walk to the Lintons' house. We wanted to see if Isabella and Edgar Linton are punished all the time by their parents, as we are. "Probably not," I answered. "I expect they are good children and don't need to be punished." "Nonsense, Ellen. Guess what we saw when we looked in at their sitting-room window? A very pretty room with soft carpets and white walls. Catherine and I would love to have a room like that. But in the middle of this beautiful room, Isabella and Edgar Linton were screaming and fighting over a little dog. How stupid they are, Ellen. If Catherine wanted something, I would give it to her, and she would do the same for me. I would rather be here at Wuthering Heights with her, even if I'm punished by Joseph and that wicked Hindley, than at Thrushcross Grange with those two fools." "Not so loud, Heathcliff. But you still haven't told me why Catherine isn't with you." Well, as we were looking in, we started laughing at them so loudly that they heard us and sent the dogs after us. We were about to run away when a great fierce dog caught Catherine's leg in its teeth. I attacked it and made it let go of her leg, but the Linton servants appeared and caught hold of me. They must have thought we were robbers. Catherine was carried unconscious into the house, and they pulled me inside too. All the time I was shouting and swearing at them. "What a wicked pair of thieves," said old Mr. Linton. "The boy must be a gypsy. He's as dark as the devil." Mrs. Linton raised her hands in horror at the sight of me. Catherine opened her eyes, and Edgar looked closely at her. "Mother," he whispered. whispered. "The young lady is Miss Earnshaw of Wuthering Heights. I've seen her in church occasionally. And look what our dog has done to her leg. It's bleeding badly." "Miss Earnshaw? With a gypsy?" cried Mrs. Linton. "Surely not. But I think you must be right, Edgar. This girl is wearing black, and Mr. Earnshaw died recently. It must be her. I'd better put a bandage on her leg at once." "Why does her brother Hindley let her run around with such a companion?" wondered Mr. Linton. "I remember now. He's the gypsy child Mr. Earnshaw brought home from Liverpool a few years ago." "He's a wicked boy. You can see that," said Mrs. Linton. "And did you hear the bad language he used just now? I'm shocked that my children heard it." "I was pushed out into the garden, but I stayed to watch through the window. They put Catherine on a comfortable sofa, cleaned her wound, and fed her with cakes and wine. I only left the house when I was sure she was well taken care of. She's a breath of fresh air for those stupid Lintons. I'm not surprised they like her. Everybody who sees her must love her, mustn't they, Ellen?" "I'm afraid you'll be punished for this, Heathcliff," I said sadly, and I was right. Hindley warned Heathcliff that he must never speak to Catherine again, or he would be sent away from Wuthering Heights, and it was decided that Catherine would be taught to behave like a young lady. She stayed with the Linton family at Thrushcross Grange for 5 weeks until Christmas. By that time, her leg was fine, and her manners were much better than before. Frances Earnshaw visited her often, bringing her pretty dresses to wear, and persuading her to take care of her appearance, so that when she finally came home after her long absence, she almost seemed a different person. Instead of a wild, hatless girl, we saw a beautiful, carefully dressed young lady. When she had greeted all of us, she asked for Heathcliff. "Come forward, Heathcliff," called Hindley. "You may welcome Miss Catherine home, like the other servants." Heathcliff was used to being outside all day and had not bothered to wash or change his clothes. His face and hands were black with dirt. In spite of this, Catherine was very glad to see him and rushed up to kiss him. Then she laughed. "How funny and black and cross you look. But that's because I'm used to Edgar and Isabella, who are always so clean and tidy. Well, Heathcliff, have you forgotten me?" But, ashamed and proud, the boy said nothing, until suddenly his feelings were too much for him. "I won't stay to be laughed at," he cried, and was about to run away when Catherine caught hold of his hand. "Why are you angry, Heathcliff? You just look a bit strange, that's all. You're so dirty." She looked worriedly at her hands and her new dress. "You needn't have touched me," he said, pulling away his hand. "I like being dirty, and I'm going to be dirty." As he ran miserably out of the room, Hindley and his wife laughed loudly, delighted that their plan to separate the two young people seemed to be succeeding. The next day was Christmas Day. Edgar and Isabella Linton had been invited to lunch, and their mother had agreed on condition that her darlings were kept carefully apart from that wicked boy. I felt sorry for poor Heathcliff, and while the Earnshaws were at church, I helped him wash and dress in clean clothes. "You're too proud," I scolded him as I brushed his black hair. "You should think how sad Catherine is when you can't be together. And don't be jealous of Edgar Linton." "I wish I had blue eyes and fair hair like him. I wish I behaved well and was going to inherit a fortune." "He has none of your intelligence or character. And if you have a good heart, you'll have a handsome face. Who knows who your parents were? Perhaps a king and queen, far more important than the Lintons." In this way, I encouraged Heathcliff to have more confidence in himself. But when the Earnshaws and the Lintons arrived back from church, the first thing Hindley did was shout at Heathcliff, "Get out of my sight until we've finished eating! I'll pull that long hair of yours if you don't obey me at once." "It is long," said Edgar. "I'm surprised he can see anything." This was too much for Heathcliff. He looked desperately around for a weapon, picked up a bowl of hot soup, and threw it at Edgar, who started screaming. Hindley immediately took hold of Heathcliff and pushed him upstairs. "I'm sure Hindley's going to hit him," cried Catherine. "I hate it when Heathcliff is punished. It's your fault, Edgar. You annoyed him. Why did you speak to him?" "I didn't," replied Edgar, tears in his eyes. "I promised Mother I wouldn't. I spoke about him, not to him." "Well, don't cry," said Catherine with scorn. "You've made enough trouble already. Here comes my brother." Hindley returned, hot and breathless. "That'll teach him," he said. "And now let's have lunch." The others seemed to forget Heathcliff, but I noticed Catherine could not eat much, and I knew she was sorry for her friend. In the evening, there was music from a travelling band and dancing in the main room. Catherine said the music sounded sweeter from high up, and so she went to sit in the dark on the stairs. When I went to find her, however, I discovered she had gone right to the top of the house to talk to Heathcliff through his locked bedroom door, and had then climbed out onto the roof and in through his window. I persuaded them both to come out of the room the same way, as I had no key to the door, and took Heathcliff down into the warm servants' kitchen with me, while Catherine returned to her guests and the dancing. "You must be hungry, Heathcliff," I said. "You haven't eaten all day. Have some Christmas cake, do." "I can't eat anything," he growled, putting his head in his hands. "I've got to think how I can have my revenge on Hindley. I only hope he doesn't die first. He'll be sorry he's treated me like this, Ellen." Chapter 5. Catherine and Edgar, 1778. In the summer of this year, Hindley's wife Frances had her first and last baby. They called the boy Hareton, but the poor woman had been ill for a long time, although we had not realised it, and died soon after Hareton was born. Hindley only had room in his heart for two people, himself and his wife. So when she died, he was in despair. He neither cried nor prayed. Instead, he swore at God and man and drank himself to sleep every night. The servants all left him, except for Joseph and me. Joseph enjoyed being able to scold his wicked employer with warnings from the Bible, and I could not leave Miss Catherine. After all, I had grown up with her and Hindley. But the master's behaviour was a bad example for Catherine and Heathcliff. At 15, Catherine was the most beautiful girl for miles around, but she was proud and quick-tempered. She led what was almost a double life. At Wuthering Heights, under Heathcliff's influence, she annoyed Hindley, laughed at Joseph, and was rude to me. But at Thrushcross Grange, which she often visited, she showed a different, calmer side of her character, and was polite, intelligent, and amusing. The Lintons all liked her, and poor Edgar had fallen in love with her. Heathcliff was 16 at this time. He did not have time to study any more, and the long hours of work on the farm made him tired and dull. There was always an angry expression on his face, and he did not even try to keep himself clean and tidy. He seemed to want people to dislike him. Catherine and he still spent time together when he was not working in the fields, but he no longer expressed his fondness for her in words, and he looked angry if she touched or kissed him. One afternoon, when Hindley had gone into town, Heathcliff came into the main room after lunch. I was helping Catherine to arrange her hair, as she had invited Edgar Linton to visit her while Hindley was absent. "Catherine, are you going anywhere this afternoon?" asked Heathcliff. "Why have you got that silk dress on? Nobody's visiting you, I hope." "No, I don't think so," replied Catherine, looking quickly at me. "But you should be at work by now, Heathcliff." "That devil Hindley isn't away very often. I'm taking a holiday. I won't work any more today. I'm staying with you this afternoon. He'll never know." Catherine thought for a moment. Somehow she had to prepare him for Edgar's visit. "Isabella and Edgar said they might call here this afternoon. If they come, you'll be scolded for not working." "Tell Ellen to say you're busy and can't see them," he said. "Those friends of yours take up all your time. You spend most of your evenings with them, not with me." "Well, why should I always spend my time with you?" she asked crossly. "What can you talk about? How can you amuse me?" "You never told me before that you didn't like my company, Catherine," cried Heathcliff. Just then we heard a horse outside, and there was a light knock on the door. Edgar Linton entered, his handsome face full of delight at receiving Catherine's unexpected invitation. I wondered if Catherine was comparing her two friends as Edgar came in and Heathcliff ran out. "I haven't come too soon, have I?" asked Edgar politely. "No," answered Catherine. "Leave us alone, Ellen." "I'm just doing my work, miss," I replied, pretending to dust the furniture. Hindley had told me to be present if Edgar Linton came to visit Catherine. She came up to me and whispered crossly, "Go away, Ellen." Keeping her back to Edgar, she cruelly scratched my arm. "Oh!" I screamed, to show Edgar what had happened. "What a wicked thing to do, miss! You have no right to hurt me." "I didn't touch you, you lying creature!" she cried angrily, and unable to control herself, hit me hard on the face. "Catherine, love! Catherine!" cried Edgar, shocked. The baby Hareton, who followed me everywhere, immediately started sobbing and saying, "Wicked Aunt Catherine." She picked him up and shook the poor child until he screamed. Edgar rushed up to her and tried to stop her. At once she turned and hit him over the ear as hard as she could. The young man looked very pale and went straight to the door. "Where are you going, Edgar Linton?" she asked. "Don't leave me. I shall be miserable all night." "Can I stay after you have hit me?" he replied. "You've made me afraid and ashamed of you. I won't come here again." "Well, go then if you want to," she cried. "I'm going to cry until I'm ill." And she dropped onto the floor, her shoulders shaking and the tears rolling down her face. Edgar managed to get as far as the door, but here he hesitated, and I called out to him to encourage him to leave. "Miss is just a selfish child, sir. You'd better ride home and forget her." But as he could not stop looking at her, I knew there was no hope for him. Nothing would keep him away from her now. And sure enough, he came back into the room and shut the door. This time, I left them alone and stayed in the kitchen with little Hareton. But when I came to warn them that Hindley had returned, I realised that their quarrel had only brought them closer together. Chapter 6. Heathcliff Disappears, 1778 to 1779. Hindley came into the kitchen, swearing terribly, just as I was about to hide little Hareton in a cupboard. I was always afraid that Hindley would hurt his small son, either by accident or on purpose, when he was drunk. So I tried to keep Hareton out of the way. But this time, Hindley discovered my plan. "Ah! You keep my son in a cupboard, do you?" he cried angrily, picking up a sharp kitchen knife. "With the devil's help, I'll make you swallow this, Ellen." And he pushed the knife between my teeth. I was never afraid he would hurt me, and calmly took the knife out of my mouth. "But that can't be my son, can it?" he continued aggressively, staring at the frightened little boy. "If it is, he should be punished for not running to greet his father. Perhaps I'll cut his ears off." And then suddenly his manner changed. "No, Hareton, darling, don't cry. Kiss me. Kiss your father." "What? You won't? Then I'll break your neck." Poor Hareton, screaming wildly, was carried upstairs by his father. Suddenly, Hindley stopped on the stairs to listen, almost forgetting what he was holding. Heathcliff had come into the house and stood at the bottom of the stairs, looking up. Just then, the child jumped out of Hindley's arms and fell. I only had time to gasp in horror before I saw that Heathcliff had caught him. Heathcliff stared down at the child he was holding. He must have felt sorry he had saved the life of his enemy's son. I rushed to take the poor little boy in my arms, and Hindley came slowly downstairs. "Look what you've done, Mr. Hindley," I cried. "You nearly killed your own son. What would his mother say if she were alive?" "Take him away, Ellen. And you, Heathcliff, go away too. I won't murder you tonight, unless perhaps I set the house on fire. but that depends how I feel." And he poured himself a drink. "Don't drink any more, Mr. Hindley," I begged. "What difference does it make?" he growled. "Get out, both of you! To the devil with you!" We left him swearing at us and went back into the kitchen. "It's a pity he can't kill himself with drink," muttered Heathcliff. "Dr. Kenneth says he'll live longer than any of us. He's so strong." He walked out of the door, and I thought into the fields. In fact, I discovered later that he was sitting just under the window and could hear everything that was said in the kitchen. I was singing Little Hareton to sleep when Catherine came in. "Are you alone, Ellen?" she whispered. "Where's Heathcliff?" "He's out on the farm," I answered. She looked sad and worried, and I even saw a tear or two on her face. But I had not forgotten how she had lied and behaved so badly to me as well as to Edgar Linton, so I did not feel sorry for her or encourage her to talk. "Ellen, will you keep a secret for me?" she asked in the end, giving me her sweetest smile. "I must tell you. I need your advice." "Today, Edgar Linton has asked me to marry him, and I gave him an answer. Now, before I tell you if it was yes or no, you tell me which I should have said." "Really, Miss Catherine, how can I know? Perhaps you should have refused him. He must be a fool to ask you after you were so rude and violent this afternoon." "Well, I accepted him, Ellen," she said crossly. "But should I have done so? Should I? What do you think?" "First, do you love him?" I asked. "Of course I do," she replied. "Why do you love him, Miss Catherine?" "Well, I do. That's enough." "Well, because he's handsome and a pleasant companion." "Ooh, that's bad," I said, shaking my head. "And because he loves me? That's worse. And because he'll be rich, and I shall be the most important woman for miles around. Worst of all. But there are several other handsome, rich young men in the world. Why don't you marry one of them?" "I don't know any of them. I only know Edgar." "Well, I don't know why you're unhappy, Miss Catherine. Your brother will be pleased, and Mr. Edgar's parents will too. You love Edgar, and Edgar loves you. What's the problem?" "Here. And here," replied Catherine, beating her head and her chest. "In my heart and soul, I know I'm wrong. Ellen, I can't live apart from Heathcliff. He is more myself than I am. Our souls are the same. I have nothing in common with Edgar, but I can't marry Heathcliff now. Hindley has made him become a poor, dull farm worker. He'll never know how I love him." I suddenly heard a movement outside the window and saw Heathcliff stand up and walk away. I realised he had been listening until he heard Catherine say she could not marry him. Then he stayed to hear no more. "Quiet, Miss Catherine," I said. "Just imagine how hard it will be for Heathcliff when you marry Mr. Edgar. He'll have no friends at all when you leave him." "Leave him? Why should we be separated?" she asked angrily. "Who will separate us? Nobody will dare. Edgar must learn to accept him as my friend. Didn't you ever think, Ellen, that if Heathcliff and I married, we would be very poor? But if I marry Edgar, I can help Heathcliff with my husband's money. That's the worst reason you've given so far for marrying Mr. Edgar, I replied, shocked. It isn't. Heathcliff is more important to me than myself. My love for Edgar is like the leaves on the trees. I'm sure time will change it. But my love for Heathcliff is like the rocks in the ground. Not beautiful, but necessary and unchanging. He's always, always in my heart. Just then, Joseph entered the kitchen. I whispered to Catherine that I was sure Heathcliff had heard some of what she said. She jumped up, frightened, and rushed outside. But although we all looked everywhere for Heathcliff, there was no sign of him that night, or for many nights in the future. At about midnight, while we were still waiting for him to come home, we noticed the wind was getting stronger. We could hear it whistling down the chimney and howling all around the house. Suddenly, there was a terrible crash of thunder, and the branch of a tree fell onto the roof. We were not hurt, but Joseph immediately dropped onto his knees to pray. The rain was beating down on the windows, but Catherine stayed outside, although by now her hair and clothes were completely wet. In the end, we all went to bed. I managed to persuade Catherine to come in, but she insisted on sleeping in the kitchen in case Heathcliff returned during the night. In the morning, we discovered that she had caught a fever as a result of getting wet. She became seriously ill, and it was several weeks before Dr. Kenneth would allow her out of bed. When she recovered, she was invited to stay for a while at Thrushcross Grange. Unfortunately, old Mr. and Mrs. Linton caught the fever too, and died within a few days of each other. Catherine returned to us, prouder and quicker-tempered than ever, but not as strong as before. If she gets ill again, it could be fatal, Dr. Kenneth warned us. My advice to you is to do whatever she wants and don't make her angry. So we had to obey all her orders, and Joseph and I were not allowed to scold her anymore. Edgar Linton was still in love with her, and thought himself the happiest man on earth when he married her 3 years after his parents' death. She insisted on having me with her, so we moved together to Thrushcross Grange, although I was very sad to leave little Hareton with his father. It's very late, Mr. Lockwood. I think you should go to bed, or you'll be ill tomorrow. I can tell you the rest of the story another time.
4 weeks later. In fact, I was ill the next day, and have been ill since then. The terrible night I spent at Wuthering Heights was the cause of my illness, and I blame Mr. Heathcliff for it. Dr. Kenneth has warned me I won't be able to go out until the spring. All I can do is lie in bed, listening to the howling wind and staring at the grey northern sky. So I've decided to ask Mrs. Dean to come upstairs and finish telling me her story. She tells me she's happy to continue.